Hello, welcome back to the Board Games 4K YouTube channel, and this is a channel where we give you reviews, playthroughs, unboxings, and we generally talk a lot of bollocks about tabletop gaming in general. And in this video we're going to be talking about, I think it was a 2005 worker placement game by Uwe Rosenberg. We're going to be talking about Agricola, and in this game you will be placing workers out onto spaces that will allow you to take actions to gather resources, upgrade your dwellings, to acquire all types of farm animals that will allow you to avoid starvation and eventually run the best farm to win the game. And in this video we're going to be giving you a very brief overview of the rules. We're going to be telling you what we do like, what we don't like, and then we will come back and we'll tell you whether or not Agricola is still worth playing 10-ish or so years after it was initially released. So remember, if you're new here, then please consider subscribing to this channel. Leave a comment in that section down below, and we'll see you after this. Board Games 4K. Agricola. How do you play this game? So at the beginning of the game, everybody is going to be given one of these player boards, and you'll see that these are divided into different squares, right? You've got 2 rooms in your building. You've got a load of spaces that you can develop. You can store animals in there. You can use these spaces to grow crops and all sorts of stuff. And you also get given a bunch of stables. You get given a bunch of fences, and everybody starts with 2 of these worker discs that you'll be using placed out onto the board to take actions in the worker phase. So the first thing that you'll do in Agricola is you will take one of these stage cards and you'll reveal it, and you'll place it on the appropriate place on the player board, and this will open up another action for all players to take. And on your turn, what you'll do, you'll take one of your worker discs and you'll place it on one of the available actions, and then you will take that action. So some of the actions that you can take: you can build an extra room if you trade in a certain amount of resources. You'll be able to take 3 clay off the board. You'll be able to take 4 wood off the board. You'll be able to take a grain. You could play a field, which means that you can add a field to your board, or you can play an occupation card. At the beginning of the game, everybody is dealt a hand of 7 occupation cards that they can play, and are also given a hand of 7 minor improvement cards that they can play if they take that action. There's different decks depending on what sort of game you want to play. You could play the complex game, you could play the interactive game, or you could play the basic easy game if you want. And some of the occupations that you can get are, you could get the swineherd, which means whenever you use the take 1 wild boar action space, you can receive 1 additional wild boar from the supply. You can get the estate manager, which at the end of a 3, 4, 5 player game, if no player has more animals any type than you could get the wood hut builder, which means at the end of the game you receive 1 bonus point for each room in your wooden hut. And all of these are quite powerful. They introduce into the game game breaking abilities that you can use to stump the other players depending on what deck you use. So there's 14 rounds to Agricola, and as you progress through the game you'll be revealing more and more action spaces that you can go to, and all the round cards will eventually be revealed. The trick is that you don't know in what order they're going to come out. So some of the other action spaces that will be available in later rounds are, you'll be able to build fences which will allow you to pen in animals. And the way this works is that you can keep a maximum of 2 animals in one pasture as long as they're completely fenced in. But if you've got a stable in that pasture, then that doubles the amount of animals that you can have in that pasture. And you can use animals for food. You also get victory points at the end of the game for different types of animals that you've got on your player board. You could sow and or bake bread. What this means is if you've got a field that's been ploughed, you can stick 1 of your grain or vegetables from the supply in that field, and then you can take 2 grain from the supply and dump it on top, which will allow you to take it when it's harvested in the harvest phase, which we'll talk about in a bit. You can place a vegetable on the field, and then you can add 1 vegetable, and that also allows you to harvest it. And also you can bake bread if you've got one of the major improvements, which allows you to convert grain into bread, which will give you more food. So the sheep will come out in stage 1 as well. Sheep can be used as food, and they also give you victory points at the end of the game. And also at some point in stage 2, family growth card will be available, and this will allow you to grow your family, obviously. This will allow you to gain more workers, which will allow you to take more actions. But when there's a harvest phase at the end of a certain amount of rounds, and the harvests become more frequent towards the end of the game, then you will have to feed your workers 2 food at the end during every harvest phase. If you don't feed them, then you have to take a begging card, and this is worth -3 victory points at the end of the game, right? So like we said, one of the major points in this game is being able to build extra stuff, and that's where this minor improvement deck comes into play. And like we said earlier, you get 7 of these cards to mess about with, and what you do, you take the action on the board and it will allow you to play one of these 7 cards from your hand, and these will give you a game-breaking ability. So some of the minor improvement cards that are available are, you could have the animal yard, and this allows you to store 2 different types of animals on that card. That's lovely. You get to use the corn scoop, so whenever you take 1 grain, you get an additional grain. That's really, really powerful. And also you can get the gypsy's crock. Whenever you convert any 2 goods to food at one time using a fireplace, cooking hearth or cooking corner, you receive 1 additional food. That's lovely. So like we said, you'll keep doing this. There's 14 rounds. More actions will be revealed. You'll be accruing different types of animals. You'll be sowing corn and vegetables onto your ploughed fields. You'll be attempting to get as much food as possible, maybe to avoid getting these begging cards, but sometimes it might be in your interest to get one of these begging cards, right? So you'll keep doing this. You'll be upgrading your house. You can upgrade it to a clay hut, you can upgrade it to a stone hut, and you'll be expanding your family to take more actions, but you have to be aware that that will cost you more food. At the end of the 14th round, you will top up your victory points. The game rewards you for having a lot of everything, a bit of everything. So you need to diversify. You can't knuckle down on one strategy. You have to do a bit of everything. In the game, the player with the most victory points is the winner of Agricola. So what do we like about Agricola? So the first thing that we like about Agricola is the way that there is an abundance of options in this game through using the minor improvement cards and the occupation cards, and the fact there's not just 1 deck of cards, there's 3 decks. You've got the complex deck and you've got the interactive deck as well, that gives you even more options. And the fact you can mix and match, you can chuck all of these cards into 1 massive deck, and there's also the option to buy other decks that you can throw in there as well, makes this game absolutely enormous and immensely replayable. So the next thing that we really like about Agricola is the way that you can block other players from using other spaces, and this adds another layer of strategy to the game. So that makes turn order one of the most important spaces that you can go to, but obviously that means that you'll be using up an extra worker every turn. So the fact that you've got to make sure that you are near the top in the pecking order, but also make sure you've got enough workers to do the jobs that you want is a mouth-watering prospect. The final thing that we really like about Agricola is the way that this scales all the way across all player counts, from solo up to 5, and in the newer version you've even got the option of adding a 6th player if you want to. And okay, there may not be enough components to allow you to play with higher player counts because they're sort of quite feeble on the amount of wooden components especially that are available. The way that you can add in certain types of boards, that you can take certain occupation cards and minor improvements out of the game to make sure the game scales well, and you add in extra action cards as well to make the game more playable with higher player counts and lower player counts, is a stroke of genius by Uwe Rosenberg, and it must have taken an absolute eon to playtest this game to make sure that all the cogs in the wheel turn as fluently and as efficiently as possible. So the next thing that we like about Agricola is the production value. It still holds up to date, and obviously it was the original version, didn't come with any of these what they call animeeples, right? So they've updated it in 2012, I think that's what they did. And yeah, so it still looks good. It's got that Uwe Rosenberg style artwork that has been carried on through games like Le Havre and Caverna. Yeah, the production value is absolutely excellent. So another thing that we really like about it is the way that all the actions in the game are known to the players beforehand, but it's the order in which they appear that adds a certain element of randomness to this game, and it also stops players from using the same strategy that is sort of prevalent in games like Puerto Rico, right? So there's not any one true path through this game, and you add in the uncertainty around the occupation cards and the minor improvement cards, and then you've got yourself a hugely replayable game that isn't anchored to one particular strategy, right? So what don't we like about Agricola? So the first thing that we don't particularly like about Agricola is the way that the occupations and minor improvements that are dealt to you at the beginning of the game can be slightly unbalanced, and we recommend maybe if you've got time and you can be bothered to do like a drafting round beforehand, because if you're left with a lot of crappy occupations, a lot of crappy minor improvements, but somebody else has got these really, really powerful ones, then you're sort of at a disadvantage, and it's through no fault of your own. But also, that I suppose that's sort of mitigated from the fact that the other players won't have enough time to play all of their occupation cards. So I suppose it sort of balances itself out in a sense. But then again, if you are left with some really, really shoddy occupation cards, then that is a bit of a downer right out the gate, right? So another couple of things that we don't like about Agricola is that for new players there can be some rather confusing terms, like because the game refers to sort of and or baked bread, and we've had occasions where new players sort of think, well, how's that work? Do I do that and do that, or can I do either or? And what or who, how, that sort of thing. So this is also sort of amplified by the fact that the rulebook is, you need a magnifying glass to read the rulebook. I mean, the print is so small that it's on a microcosmic level. Yeah, it's almost like the rulebook was written for Lilliputians, and it's a pain in the neck. You really do need to sort of maybe download a revised PDF of this so you can print it off and actually read it in a font that allows you to not squint and ruin your eyesight. So there is that. So yeah, that's one of the big downers about this game. So another thing that we don't like about Agricola is the way that this game has sort of been superseded by other games like Caverna and A Feast for Odin. Maybe the whole concept of this Agricolan type game is starting to get a little bit tired. It's almost like Uwe Rosenberg just keeps on developing this kind of theme. It's like Call of Duty. You know what you're getting. It's the same thing year on year out. Little knobs on, and maybe it's getting a little bit tired. So yeah, there is that as well. So to summarise, is Agricola still worth playing today and in the future? And we're going to say yes, Agricola is absolutely worth playing still today in 2019, and we think this game is going to be around for a very long time indeed. It didn't stay at the top of the Board Game Geek rankings for so long if it was a load of shit. So it's a wonderfully themed game. It's probably one of the best farmer simulators, if not the only farmer simulator games worth playing today. It does suffer from a very confusing rulebook, and for new players the occupations and the minor improvements may be a little bit overwhelming, but it does have a family version included in the older version. There is like a sort of standalone family version, but for sheer breadth and depth of options, this is a really, really sort of, well, I suppose sort of a next level game that will sort of allow you to sort of dip your toes in the water of the universe of Uwe Rosenberg, and maybe tempt you into sort of getting into more complex games like Caverna and Feast for Odin. And that's also one of the problems with this game, is maybe it's sort of flogging a dead horse with this type of game now. You know, okay, Lahar stands on its own apart from these sort of games, but yeah, we still recommend Agricola. We're going to give it a 4 out of 5 because it's a unique sort of theme that we really, really like. It looks pretty, and there's you could play this till the day you die, and you'd still have a different amount of options to consider when you play this one. So remember, if you're new here, then please consider subscribing to this channel. Leave a comment in that section down below, and we'll see you next time.